And we are live again. So welcome back everybody to the fourth session, this time featuring Alexander Kjerulf, expert in happiness at work. I hope you all join us. And we have Dr. Kirkpatrick as well. And we have our reporter Eleanor. I want to say just a few words, Eleanor. Okay, no sound. Okay, so I'll hand it over to Alexander. Take it away.
Sure, awesome, thanks. It's good to be here. So happiness at work may seem like a bit of a strange topic for a lot of people. And I think that if you go back, just a few decades, maybe a century, the idea that people could even be happy at work was completely alien. For the longest time, work has been hard, stressful, dangerous, unpleasant, and something you do only because you have to. You do it to survive. You certainly don't do it because you enjoy it. Fortunately, this idea is changing. Okay, the idea goes back a long way, by the way. If you go back to the writings of Plato, in one of his works, he writes that work is something that slaves do so that free men can enjoy their lives. And for the longest time, that has been the attitude we have had towards work. And work has been really hard and unpleasant. For instance, probably the hardest period, the worst period work-wise in human history has probably been during the Industrial Revolution. For those of you watching David Marquet's presentation, you saw these factory workers assembling radios. If you go back to the Industrial Revolution, the first time people actually worked in factories, this is in the 17 and 1800s, starting in England. For the first time, people worked in factories, and they were crammed into these massive factories. They worked under dangerous conditions. They worked with dangerous chemicals. They worked long, long hours. They worked 16, 20 hours a day. And they got paid almost nothing. And work was really hard, unpleasant, and dangerous, and something you did only because you were forced to do it. Fortunately, work got better and better and better, and few people today work under those conditions. For instance, in England, in 1819, they passed a law to improve the conditions of factory workers. It was called the Factory Act of 1819, and one of the provisions of that law was that children could work a maximum of 16 hours a day. Yes, a day. Yeah, I know. Fortunately, things got better, but this is my claim. The idea that work is hard, that work is unpleasant, that work is something you do only because you have to, is still with us. A lot of people have not even realized that it is possible to have a job you love, a job you enjoy, something that you can actually look forward to most mornings when you wake up in the morning. And we need to change that idea. And that is basically the work that I do. I make people happy at work. My company is called Woohoo! And I want to make this perfectly clear. The company is not called Woohoo. The company is called Woohoo! And we make people happy at work. We've been doing this for 10 years now. We're based in Copenhagen, Denmark. And we help workplaces become happier workplaces. We do this mostly in Denmark, but increasingly around the world. I have spoken in 30 different countries, and I've just been booked to speak in Israel in December. That'll be country number 31 that I have spoken in. So, so this idea of happiness at work, I think it's new, but I think it's crucial. And what I want to talk about here is basically three things. So the three important questions you need to ask about anything: what, why, how. What is happiness at work? Why is it so important? How do you do it? That's basically what I'd like to cover very, very briefly. And whatever questions may come up, I don't really, maybe I can monitor the Twitter stream from here. Hang on a second. I do believe I can. So if anybody wants to ask me anything, go on the Twitter stream and ask me whatever you would like, and I'd be happy to answer that. Yes. Awesome. So happiness at work, what is it? And I think that a lot of people and a lot of managers and a lot of companies get this exactly wrong, because instead of happiness, they focus on employee satisfaction. Okay, that's what they measure. That's what they strive to maximize for and improve. But happiness is not satisfaction. This is the difference. Job satisfaction is what you think about your job. When you sit down and you consider all the factors in your workplace, are you satisfied or not? You know, maybe I live a little far from my workplace, I have a long commute, but on the other hand, I like my coworkers. Maybe sometimes we're a little busy, but I think we do good work. And you know, you weigh the pros and cons and you decide, am I satisfied? That is not happiness. Satisfaction, job satisfaction is what you think about your job. Happiness is what you feel about your job. On any regular Tuesday morning, you're at your desk doing your job. How do you feel? Do you feel good? Do you feel like you belong there? Do you feel like you're doing good work? Do you feel proud of your work? How do you feel? And this is happiness at work. It's your emotional state at work or at home when you think about your job. You know, on a Sunday evening, the weekend is almost over. There's a new work week ahead of you. When you think about the coming work week, how do you feel? And this is a radical shift because in a lot of workplaces today, nobody cares how you feel. We don't care how you feel as long as you do your job. And we definitely need to change that. And if you ask me, what is leadership? What is management? I would say that more than anything else, management is about making your employees happy. Because as long as they're happy, they're doing a good job. So that is what happiness is, and that's a radical shift from what companies are doing today. In fact, I would say that many companies today are almost afraid of emotions. They really don't want to see you showing any kind of emotion in the workplace, good or bad. They really fear and distrust emotion. So that's what happiness is. Second question, why do we care? Why should we care if we're happy at work? Isn't it good enough to just have a job? And no, it's not. It's actually vitally important to have a job you like for many reasons. I'm just going to mention 3. First of all, time. You will spend more of your waking hours at work than you will on anything else, okay? Except sleep. Except sleep. They've done these time studies to find out what people spend their time on over an entire lifetime. And it turns out that number one is sleep. Number 2 is work. By the way, number 3, television. That is scary as hell. So you'll spend more waking hours at work than you will on anything else in your entire life. And you are unhappy in that time. That is just a massive waste of time and a massive waste of life. So sort of the first reason to be happy at work is that you will simply spend so much time there. Secondly, your happiness at work affects your happiness in life. And if you hate your job, I can pretty much guarantee you that you'll hate your life. They've actually, again, the happiness research, positive psychology, they've looked into what makes us happy in life. And the 3 major factors that make us happy in life are a good romantic relationship, close friendships, and a good and meaningful job. A good and meaningful job. Those are the 3 most important things that make us happy in life, according to the happiness research. That shows us how important work is. Also shows us that work is not the most important thing, which I think is very important to realize. There are still more important things in life than work, and those things are love and friendship. And another reason, so another reason to be happy at work, why you should care if you actually like your job, is health. It turns out that hating your job can make you sick, and it can actually kill you. There was a major study done of 22,000 American nurses, and they found that the nurses who hated their jobs had a much higher risk of getting sick. And we're talking serious diseases like some forms of cancer, like heart disease, stress and depression, and type 2 diabetes. So hating your job can make you sick, and it can ultimately kill you. And finally, just one more reason is that liking your job also makes you more successful. And I realize for a lot of people, it's the other way around. A lot of people say, I'm going to work really hard, that will make me successful, and success will make me happy. But it actually turns out that it works in the opposite direction, and that people who are happy at work do a much better job, and those people will end up becoming happier. Becoming more successful. So success doesn't really drive happiness, but happiness does drive success. And by the way, this also means that happy workplaces are more successful. We know from the research that people who are feeling good, who are happy at work, are more productive, more creative, more open to new ideas. They give better customer service. They sell more. They're more motivated, more engaged, more optimistic, and so on. And that quite simply means that that happy people, happy employees do a much better job, and happy companies make more money. And there's a ton of studies to back that up. So I think that's the second question. Why should we care? And we should care because it's really good for us as employees, and it's really good for the success of the business. But to me, the most important question is always, okay, happiness is important, fine. How do we do it? How do we create a happy workplace? What does it take? And again, I think this is where a lot of people, again, get it completely wrong, because a lot of people are chasing the wrong things for their entire work life. You know, they're chasing the next raise, the next bonus, the next promotion, the corner office, the company car, the whatever. And if you look at the research, it turns out that it's none of those things that actually make us happy at work. What does make us happy at work, according to the research, is two things. We call it results and relationships. Results is when you do a really good job. You know, you're good at your job, you achieve your goals, and I think this is really important, you get meaningful results. You can see that the work you do is helping someone who needs you. If you're a teacher and you can see that your pupils are, you know, your kids are the kids in your class are learning new things, enjoying themselves, that's meaningful results. If you're a nurse and you can see that your patients are getting better, that's meaningful results. Not just, you know, ticking off items on your to-do list, but actually helping people who need it. That feeling of pride that you get from being good at your job and from helping other people is a major source of happiness at work. And the other thing that makes us happy at work is relationships. And relationships is when you like the people you work with and they like you. And this is the, you know, the most fundamental psychological human need, is the need to belong to a group. And when we feel that we belong, we're happy. If we feel that we don't belong, we're really, really unhappy. So this sense of, you know, my coworkers like me, I like them, we respect each other, we can relax together, there's a good mood in the office, that is a major source of happiness, and something that really, really is vital for our happiness at work. So so that, again, that's the very, very brief overview from my side of happiness at work. What is it? Well, it's how you feel at work, and whether or not you feel good when you're there. It's your emotional state. Why is it so important? Well, it's really important for you as a person, and you will feel better at work, you will do a better job, and you will feel better at home if you like your job. And how do we do it? Well, results from relationships. That's where we need to focus, and make sure that you have results from relationships. You can come home from work and say, you know what? I did an awesome job today, and there was a great mood in the office. Everybody was laughing, smiling, cheerful, happy. Those are the things that make us happy at work. So I'm happy to take any questions. I'm happy to go into any topic regarding this. That was just the very brief Cliff Notes on happiness at work. Oh yeah, there's a good question here, by the way. Should we take that?
Yes, if you can see it. I couldn't.
on,
Yep,
the Twitter,
definitely.
on the Twitter stream, Jenny
Nice.
Jepson was asking, what about people who need a job or those that need money, and happiness is not a top priority? That's actually a very interesting question, and I get this a lot. You know, what about people in the third world? What if you're starving in Africa? What if you're a low-wage worker in the U.S. and you know, either if you don't have a job, you don't feed your family today. And of course, I'm not saying happiness is the only thing that matters. But interestingly, I mean, even if you work in a McDonald's drive-through in the U.S. somewhere, that can still be a good workplace. There's nothing to say that you can't work. You know, we still have to work for a living, but there's nothing to say that you can't actually enjoy what you do. And I've actually seen many people in low-wage jobs who absolutely love their jobs. You know, I've seen incredibly cheerful people at McDonald's. I was there's a local supermarket where the checkout staff are just ridiculously cheerful here in Copenhagen, and that's amazing. I'm not saying that there aren't, financial realities, because obviously there are, but I do still think that you can find happiness at work in pretty much any kind of job. And I have met happy bus drivers and happy garbage men and happy mortuary workers and happy people in almost any profession you can imagine. And that makes me incredibly optimistic, because it means that happiness is not just for people with a high salary or people with creative jobs or for people in management. Happiness at work is actually for everybody, and any job can be happy, and any workplace can be a happy work. Well, almost any workplace can be a happy workplace. Yeah.
Alexander, do you see the question in the chat feed? This one comes from the Dutch satellite, and I have another one coming from New Haven. So, what
tools do I use to increase happiness at work? Yes, good question. And that goes to the how question, which is my favorite question. How do you do this? And to start with, I believe that happiness at work is something you do. But I believe it's the same thing in life. Happiness is something you do. There are little things we can do every single day to create a happy work day. Okay, this is not rocket science. It's not incredibly complicated. It doesn't take, you don't need to create a group and they will create a happiness report and they'll, publish that report in 6 months, and then we can be happy. What we try to teach, all our work is based on teaching people very simple techniques, primarily leaders, but also employees, and teaching them what can you do to create happiness at work. And again, it comes back to results and relationships. So, for instance, what can you do to create results? Well, you could praise someone for the good work they do. If you see somebody doing a good job, go up and tell them. That's a fantastic way to create results. Another thing we teach companies is to celebrate success. In a lot of workplaces, if something goes right, we never talk about it again. If something goes right, we just take it for granted. Okay, that project was completed on time. Let's never speak of it again. But if another project is going wrong, they're behind schedule or they're over budget, that's what we need to talk about. That's where we have meetings and phone calls and emails and reports and statuses and everything, right? I think we need to change that around. And I think we need to celebrate success, okay? So if this project is going really well, let's celebrate. If this customer is really happy, let's celebrate. If we get an email from a satisfied client, that's a cause for celebration. It doesn't need to be a huge celebration, but you can celebrate things that go right. So that's on the results side. On the relationship, one more thing, by the way, one more thing about results. What you can do in a lot of workplaces is that you can make your results more visible. The thing is that in a lot of workplaces, the only thing you ever see is the work you haven't yet completed. For instance, let me give you an example. If you have a to-do list, you have 100 items on your to-do list, and you complete one of them, then you take it off in the to-do list software. What happens? It goes away. It disappears. And you can only ever see the work you haven't done, and you never talk about the work you have done, you have completed.
So true.
That is and I've seen that in so many workplaces. I was working with this insurance company in Copenhagen, and they were way behind on their jobs in this department of 55 people. And the problem was that they were understaffed. With the level of work they had, they should have been 65 people, but they couldn't find new qualified employees. And every single week, management sent out a graph in red ink to all employees, showing them how much they'd fallen behind every single week. And that just created a feeling of, we're not doing a very good job. We're falling behind constantly. It was not their fault. There was no way they could have gotten all that work done. So for instance, what we did with this company was we changed that around. We say, instead of sending out a graph showing how much they're falling behind, send out a different graph in green showing them how much work they've completed, how much work they've done. And that completely, that gave them the feeling that, wow, we're actually doing a good job. That made them happy, that made them more productive, and that way they could actually catch up. So that's results. On the relationship side, a really stupid, simple thing you can do that works surprisingly well is say good morning. When you come to work in the morning, you know, say good morning, say a cheerful, friendly good morning to your coworkers. This is such a simple thing to do, and a lot of people don't. A lot of people just come into work, sit down at their computer, start working without acknowledging anybody else. I think that's a shame. So saying good morning is incredibly simple, works really well. Another thing you can do is take time for a coffee break or a lunch break where you don't talk about work, where you instead talk about, you know, your private life. So what are you doing this weekend? How are the kids? How was your summer vacation? Whatever you can come up with. And those things create really good relationships at work. So that's what we teach companies. Really, happiness is something you do. And what we know from the happiness research is that very small things can have a very large effect. Simple things like saying good morning or praising people for the good work they do. Awesome. Any other questions that you've seen? Let's see. Let's see. Yeah, somebody here is saying the most important thing is why, not how. The most important question is why, not how. Why is an important question. But what I find in many workplaces, especially certainly many Danish workplaces, is that they get that happiness is important, and they want to create a happier workplace. The problem is just that they're doing the wrong things, and that's why it's not working. And that's why we focus on the how to get them doing the right things so they actually will work. For instance, this is kind of silly, but in Denmark for the last 10 years, the really big thing to create a happier workplace has been free fruit. Seriously, free fruit. You know, pretty much, you know, I think 75% of all Danish workplaces have this thing where, you know, every week there's a basket of fruit delivered to the office, and as an employee you can go down and grab yourself an apple or a pear or a peach or whatever. Here's my question. Is that what makes people happy at work? You know, do people come home from work saying, today was awesome, I got 2 apples? And somehow I don't think so. We need people in companies and managers to do the right things to make people happy at work. And the right things are things that create results in relationships, because those are the main drivers of positive emotion in the workplace. When you do, again, results in relationships, when you do great work together with great people. Let's see, what else do we have? A big difference between happiness and the pursuit of happiness. Yeah, that's actually a very deep point. And sometimes it's actually the pursuit of happiness that makes people unhappy. A lot of people are going, oh my God, I have everything, why am I not happy? And there's actually a paradox there, because what's keeping them from being happy is their own desire and you know, let's say, you know, their own maybe too much of a wish to be happy. And here's the point. No one can be happy all the time. You cannot be happy in your private life all the time. You cannot be happy at work all the time. This is, you know, we're not, as human beings, we're not built to be happy all the time. That's not the way our minds work. We're built to be, most of the time we're in a state of mild contentment, is what psychologists call it. Then something good happens, you become happy. Then something bad happens, you become unhappy. That's just the way our minds work. We're not designed to be happy all the time. Not the way our minds work. How can I recognize the group of groups that lead to happiness at work? Group or that lead to happiness at work? I'm afraid I don't understand that question from Italy. If someone can rephrase it, I'll be happy to answer it. How can I recognize the group of groups that lead to happiness at work most?
In the meantime, Alexander, can we just, is there Doug Kirkpatrick also on the film strip, and Doug is with the Self-Organizing Institute. Do you have anything you want to put in on the conversation, Doug?
Yeah, no, I appreciate Alexander's comments so much and agree with everything. I was just making a few notes as he was talking, and you know, appreciate his introduction where he talked about the Industrial Revolution and the danger, long hours, and forced hard labor, etc. And I thought it was interesting because the company that I kind of grew up in the 1990s, Morningstar, really started out as a principle-centered enterprise and created conditions for happiness. And what we found was we had an industrial enterprise where people worked with dangerous chemicals and they worked long hours, but they did it willingly and they were extraordinarily happy. So happiness is something that is, I think, independent of working conditions, and I think Alexander alluded to that.
Oh yeah.
Anybody can be happy at work under the right circumstances.
Yeah.
So
in fact,
what we did was in the early 90s was we started a little tomato processing factory in California, and we had a little band of 24 people, and the founder came in one day, Chris Rufer, and he said, "I'd like to organize this differently than any other company that I know of." And he said, "I want a principle-centered enterprise centered around two principles, the first of which is no one will have any command authority. There will be no force or coercion or command authority anywhere in the enterprise." And if you think about it, that's the foundation of almost all law everywhere in the world. I mean, every law against assault and battery and rape and kidnapping and murder and theft and burglary and all that stuff is predicated on the principle that people should not use force or coercion against other human beings. And the second principle had to do with the idea that people should honor the commitments they make to each other. So if you tell your colleague that you're going to complete a project by Thursday, then you follow through with your commitment, and you honor the commitment, and if you can't, you renegotiate it. And that, again, is the foundation of law, and certainly contract law is nothing if not for the honoring of commitments. So you took the enterprise down to the two most fundamental principles of human interaction and made that the governing philosophy of the entire enterprise. And so then we rolled out from there, and we constructed and built a factory in the next 4.5 months, and now it's the largest tomato processor in the entire world. And everyone in North America is eating our product, and millions of other people around the world. And it's incredible in the sense that there are no human bosses. There are no managers, there are no titles, there's no hierarchy, and no one has any authority to fire anyone. No one can be fired. So if there's a performance issue, there's a discussion that takes place, but there's no command authority whatsoever anywhere in the enterprise. And so what we find is that people are naturally happy because they have almost complete autonomy subject to the mission of the enterprise and their own mission and the commitments they make voluntarily and freely with each other to fulfill that mission. So, you know, we find that the very simple fundamental principles allow people to be free. And the fundamental principles allow people to exercise freedom, autonomy, do good work, be very productive, even in the midst of high pressures and temperatures and chemicals and dangers and long hours, and they're happy. So, you know, if we get down to the creating the how do you create conditions of happiness, I would submit that self-management, which is what we call the philosophy, is one way to get at that. And if you look at our org chart, I can hold this up, I guess. I don't know if people can see this or not, but it looks like a kind of a molecule almost. And that's the org chart of the company, and there's no hierarchy. People make connections as they wish. They have complete freedom to connect with any other colleague in the entire enterprise. So information flows freely. It's an incredibly resilient organizational model. It's like a spider web, and spider silk is by weight 5 times stronger than steel. So if a couple of people decide to leave the enterprise, it really doesn't matter because the network has already absorbed much of the expertise, and roles and responsibilities can be reconfigured and reestablished quickly, very quickly, sometimes within hours, and the resilience is fantastic. So,
and I think, and to that point, I think there's absolutely something to this, because autonomy and freedom is something that absolutely makes us happy. I don't think anybody is happy in slavery. There's a friend of mine, I have a friend called Tracy Fenton. She runs a company called World Blue. They actually promote workplace democracy, trying to inspire workplaces to become more democratic. And she asked the question, nobody wants to live in a in a dictatorship, in a country with a dictator. So why do we accept workplaces that have dictators as CEOs? And I think we should absolutely stop that. And to your other point, people working really hard and people working with dangerous chemicals and still being happy. There's actually a fundamental misconception about happiness at work, is that you are happy at work when work is easy, fun, pleasant, calm, serene. And that's actually completely wrong. That's one way to be happy at work. But I think you're even happier when you're working really hard for a noble purpose. I think my favorite quote about happiness is by George Bernard Shaw, this is the best thing ever said about happiness by anybody. And he says that this is the true happiness in life, is being used mercilessly for a purpose that you recognize as greater than yourself. A purpose you recognize as mighty, is his exact words. That is fantastic. I can tell you a story. There's a company in Copenhagen called SOS International, and we did a lot of work with them a few years ago. And they are a call center for people on vacation. We'll take the satellite question. They're a call center for people on vacation with travel insurance. So if somebody's on vacation and they break a leg and they need help, they will call this number in Copenhagen. They help thousands of people every week. And we ask these people, so when have you been happy at work? What has been the most satisfying, happiest period at work for you guys? And they all said the same thing. In 2004, during the tsunami in Thailand and Indonesia. And this was the hardest they have ever worked, because conditions after the tsunami in Thailand and Indonesia were horrible. Okay. And their clients called in with really terrible stories. They'd lost everything they had. They couldn't find their kids. They'd been hurt. Some of them had lost family members. Knew they drowned in the tsunami. And they have never worked so hard. But their work has never been so meaningful, because they were needed, and they really they helped these people, and they've never been so happy at work. Christian, you have your finger up. Christian, did you have your hand up?
Yes, I had. Thank you. We have, as Ron is so delicately pointing out here, we have a question from the Dutch satellite.
Hit me.
So bring it on, Ron.
Yeah, there we go. So I was just having a nice discussion with one of the guys in our satellite, and one of the major things happening in Europe is that there's a lot of depression in many companies. And you just mentioned some tools, and for example, you use fruit and stuff like that. So we were wondering, is fruit going to make it? Do we have other more impacting tools that we can use to...
That's the point. That's the exact point. Fruit doesn't work.
Yeah, exactly.
Fuck fruit.
So what are we going to do about that?
We got to stop with that crap. We got to realize that this is not what's working.
Yeah.
And I think we got to realize that now, in tough times, now is exactly the time to create a happy workplace. Because in tough times, more than ever, you need your employees to be productive, creative, give great customer service, and sell as much as they can. And people only do that when they're happy at work, okay? And I know that a lot of companies go in the opposite direction. They say, right now are tough times. Just today in the Danish media, there's a Danish electronics retailer. They have a lot of stores around Denmark, sell TVs and hi-fis. And they announced that we have we're losing money, so we're now going to cut everybody in the stores, all the staff. We're going to cut their salaries by 10%. And basically it's an ultimatum. Take a 10% pay cut or you're fired. That is not the way you do it. That's going to make people stressed. That's going to make people unhappy. That's going to lead to bad customer service. That's going to lead to lower sales. So, but unfortunately, that's how a lot of companies react. I think we need to go in the other direction. I think we need to say, okay, the company's in trouble. Now more than ever, we need people to be happy, motivated, and engaged. How can we create results and relationships, even in tough times? That's the question that companies need to ask themselves. And this is what the work we do for a lot of our clients. And it's not hard. It's not. I want to say it's not complicated. It's not easy, because it takes a lot of personal control for you as a manager to make sure that your employees are still happy even though the company is in tough times. That takes a lot of self-control, it takes a lot of effort, it takes a lot of creativity, but it's absolutely necessary to do it.
Can you give some examples on a situation that you've been in, and just to get some picture with it?
Sure. Again, for instance, when results are suffering, the company is losing money. That's that's all people focus on. Every month, how much money did we lose this month? Let's turn that around. Even if the company is losing money, I'm sure that somewhere in the company, somebody is doing a really good job. Some team somewhere is profitable. Some team somewhere is actually out there getting new customers. Let's find that team, celebrate that team inside the company, and tell everybody else what they're doing right, so maybe they can learn from it. That's one thing. Another thing is that, again, we know what happens to people in a crisis when we feel threatened. What happens is that we withdraw into ourselves. Okay, people become more selfish. They become less willing to help each other. They become more focused on short-term goals, and we need to change that around. We need to make sure that people are still helping each other, that people are still open to communication. Basically, what I'm talking about here, again, it goes back to results and relationships. Results and relationships. And that's what we need to create. Even, I would say, I was going to say even in tough times, but I mean especially in tough times, we need to create results and relationships. There's a fascinating case from California in 2000, a company called Xilinx, that this is during the .com crisis, and they were losing a lot of money. And what they actually did was they got their employees engaged in saving the company, in creating the ideas that it took to save the company. Instead of this is what everybody else just laid off people. They fired 10% of their staff, 20% of their staff, and they instead went in and said, let's engage our people in creating the future of this company. And it worked incredibly well. I see another company here. What is the ROI on happiness? That's a good question. That is a good question. And the answer is it depends. It depends very much on what business you're in. For instance, if you're in retail, let's say you have store employees, you're a hotel, you're a restaurant. In that case, where your business is really customer service. In that case, the ROI is massive, because we know that happy employees will make the customers happy, and that way you will sell more. The exact numbers are really hard to determine, but there are many studies that indicate that happy workplaces are about twice as profitable as unhappy workplaces. So, but again, it's I can say it's a lot. I can't necessarily say how much it is, and it's probably more in customer service than it is in, say, a factory. But even in a factory, it still matters that your employees are happy and feeling good.
Alexander, one of the things we do in self-management is we try to turn work into a game. Mm-hmm. So we try to obliterate that distinction between work and life, and we don't talk about work-life balance. We work is part of life. People we work with are alive, but we try to turn work into a game so that it's fun. And so we create metrics that are fun for people to work toward and improve. Yes. Do you have any examples, other examples that you've come across where that kind of program's in place? There's something very, very healthy about that attitude, because I think that a lot of people take work way too seriously. Work becomes life and death. Whether or not you reach your quarterly sales goal is suddenly a matter of life or death. It's a life or death situation, which makes very little sense. I think the best thing you can do is actually create more of a playful attitude towards work. What if we approach work the way we approach play? We go into it willingly. We go in knowing it'll be fun. We go into it knowing that we can stretch ourselves and do our best possible
give a best possible effort. But if we don't, but it's not life or death. I mean, that's the point here. Something you can definitely do is, instead of creating, metrics that are only about money, something that works really well is to create meaningful metrics. Instead of saying, we want a 10% increase in sales, maybe you could say we want a 10% increase in client happiness. I think that would be an awesome metric and much more meaningful for the sales staff than, sales numbers, which are kind of meaningless in themselves. Christian is waving a satellite question sign.
Yeah, and I think
yeah, Copenhagen.
Yeah, could I just point out
Jenny
that... Go ahead.
Yeah, thank you. We have a question. Well, what is your best tips and tricks, Alexander, in regards to influence or target the leaders in regards to actually changing their mindset from a command and control type of dealing with people, looking at everyone as a cog in the machinery, to creating happiness?
That's a really good question. How do you get the leaders on board with this? And some leaders just get it. You don't even need to convince them. They just, they're there. They know that's the way to go. And that's fantastic. Other leaders you will never convince. They will never get it. No matter how many reports and spreadsheets and data and ROI analyses you can give them, they will never realize that this is the way to go. The people in the middle, the ones that you might be able to convince, I think you can try with data. You can try with ROI analyses and numbers, and if we increase happiness, we could maybe increase sales by this much. But I actually think that could be a trap, because sometimes you fall into that whole metrics trap, and it becomes all about the numbers. I think maybe something that works better with these people is talking to their basic, appealing to their basic humanity. Do you want this workplace to be stressful and dictatorial and a place that people dread going into every day? Or do you want this to be a workplace that actually makes people grow and develop and become better people and better employees? I think that works much better. That appeal to the common good, actually, to creating a better world. I've seen that appeal to a lot of people.
But it's back to well one thing is that you can reason with their senses, and they say, yeah, this sounds great, but the day after then it's like, yeah, you know piano, you get a guy in to tune it, and the day after it's just back in your tune playing like.
Yes, and so there are sort of two steps. One is the convincing them that this is important. The next step is actually doing it. And that is, I think that is where you boil it down to simple things that anyone can do. That's where maybe you start with the manager and you teach them to say good morning to their employees every morning.
Okay, that at least is one really quick. Christian is pushing me, so I'll let him get back to his.
Awesome.
Yeah. Thank you.
Yes.
Are we about out of time here, or what's the status?
Yeah, we are running out of time, Alexander.
Christian, did you want to pick up the question from Italy that got missed way back ways, or is it too late for that?
No, let's ask that question. Let's see here. It was. Do you have it there, Donna? Because
I'm trying to find it. It was they re-asked it. It came back in.
Right,
all the questions that have been in the chat pane have been coming from all over the place, so they're not my questions, just to be clear.
It was further up the chain. I think at this point we should stick to the time schedule. So the guys in Italy, we encourage you to reach out to us through the various channels, and we will direct the question to Alexander.
Okay, I see the question. If you want to take it, it's there.
Okay, let's have it.
It says, "How can I find out who's doing this happy work?" That's the question they were trying to get answered.
Please say that again.
Yeah.
How can I find out who's doing this happy work? Which is like, I presume that's who else is doing this kind of work.
Inside your own workplace, or I'm not sure I get the question.
Okay, well, that's round 2. So there you go.
So let's.
Sorry, it's Friday afternoon. Okay, my brain is switching off for the weekend. I'm sorry.
Yeah. So, but Doug and Alexander, let me pull up this little sound. So thank you so much. So to the rest of you, we're gonna do the Hangout switch again, which means that we're gonna close down this Hangout, and you can go to our website on top. I think I called this one the fourth session. It's not. We're going to the fourth session now with Bo Burlingham, and it's put on the website. But since we have a 1 minute delay, we are gonna hold off for just a few minutes and settle in the new Hangout with Bo. So satellites, Stosians, it's over here. Go to the website, find the link to the new Hangout on Air, and start it. And in a few minutes, we will carry on. Thank you, Alexander and Doug.
My pleasure.
Thank you.
Doug,
Yes.
do you
And you
have
can take us off.
you heard about World Blue before?
Donna.